Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Optimized Ecommerce Podcast. I'm Tanner Larsson, and today we are joined by another special guest from the BGS team, Travis Hlavka. Now, Travis has been with us for quite a while now. He's actually my bodyguard at BGS live events in person because he's like this massive power lifter guy with a bald head and can be quite intimidating, even though he's really a teddy bear. But anyway, aside from him being my personal bodyguard at the events and scaring people away, he's also one of our revenue optimization experts and has been with us. I think, man, you must have been like fourth or fifth, RO person we brought on board, right?
Yeah, it's going on 3 years now, I think,
Yeah. So it's been quite a while. So he gets to pull double duty as an enforcer and, as a revenue optimization expert. But today, he's gonna tell you a little bit about himself and everything else. Very interesting dude, but he's actually, because he's so interesting, he's going to talk to you about a topic that is pretty interesting. It is the most important app in your business that you've never heard of. Okay. And everybody loves apps. So this one is going to be a little bit different than the usual app you're used to, but no less important and going to be a very, very exciting and valuable episode for you and your business. So with that said, Travis, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you, how you came to BGS, what you do at BGS, that kind of stuff.
Well, I'll try to keep it as brief as possible because we could be here all for an hour just talking about my background. So basically, my previous business partner, Zach Mayu, who's now the COO at BGS, we were partners for quite a while and still remain friends. And one day we got together just over coffee, and I told him all the things that I was working on business-wise and the analysis I was doing of different websites and using Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager and all these different things. And he said, you know what? I think I've got something that you might be interested in. And part of the reason he knew I'd be interested in it is because my entire life I've been into actual human optimization. And I'm fascinated by what makes things work and why they work and how to make them better and optimize them. And that's where my superpower comes in, is taking things that already exist, like amplified partner stores, and making them work and run even more effectively and efficiently. So that's a real brief background there.
Yep. So, and yeah, he came in as a recommendation from Zach, and then, dove into the RO program. And actually it was prior to us launching our internship program. So he had to really learn on his feet running. There was no graduated scale of progression. It was like, okay, you're in the deep end. And he was working with our ROs right from the get-go. So it was really cool. And then, then his first BGS Live was only a few months after he started, maybe in a month or two. It was real quick. Mm-hmm. And so he got thrown into the deep end there as well. And first encounter with me in person is like, hey dude, you're my bodyguard. And that's where it went. And it's been a lot of fun ever since. So talk a little bit about what you do now with BGS.
So now, like I was mentioning, specifically working with the amplified partners and setting them up to win from the beginning and going in and making sure that, taking all the low hanging fruit that we can take care of in the beginning, as far as optimizing the things that a lot of times we get banner blindness on our stores, and we don't see the things that are obvious to other people and that would be an obvious improvement. And then we have data for that also show that improvement. So starting there and then working through every aspect of the store. I know like Haley had talked about that previously, and the proper steps to take and the things like that, and running through those steps and making sure that everything is dialed in to a certain point, and then from there going into user testing and split testing and down that road, so that we can really, really refine and use the tools that we have access to that the general public and a lot of store owners don't have access to.
Mm-hmm. So what's your favorite aspect? Like, what do you love about RO?
It would definitely be the variety, the optimization portion of it, where it changes all the time. And you're always, and the team that we have with the different stores and the different demographics and the different industries, and being able to take things from other stores and apply them, taking something from a supplement store and applying it into, a welding store or something like that you would never think in a million years of doing. because you're in your industry and you're looking at your specific demographic and your specific niche and all of that. And you don't, a lot of times you don't branch out, and you don't have time to see that other stuff that we have time to basically zoom out of, take a look at, compare notes, and then zoom back in and actually take action on it and make a difference.
Absolutely. No, that is one of the fun parts. I mean, it's kind of crazy when you see we found this over on this industry, and it's like sewing, and then we bring it over to like a supplement site, and they're like, wait a minute, what? Trust us, let's try it. And then it works. So that's definitely cool. All right.
Yeah, I actually, real quick, I found something really cool. I actually found something one time on a Domino's pizza app that I tested that it didn't win or lose, but it was really, that's that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. You just never know where it's going to come from, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's kind of show them something else a little bit weird, which is this most important, all-powerful app that you want everybody to use. So why don't you, the first thing, let's talk about what is the app and how much does it cost?
So the app is, I've called it the human app, and it's not a app that you install in any piece of technology. You install it in yourself. It's something that you instill in yourself and potentially in other people, so that you can broaden your horizons, for lack of a better term. But app's an acronym. So it stands for awareness, perspective, and philosophy. And it's probably obvious now that it's free. The only cost to it is a little bit of time, and it doesn't even take any time, honestly. So that's the best part about it. It's more about just knowing it exists, because so many people I don't think know it exists, or don't pay attention to know that it does.
Yeah. So the app basically is an acronym for, say it again.
Awareness, perspective, and philosophy.
And we're going to be using those three pieces on their store, right?
Correct. From our perspective and from their perspective, it starts with everything revolves around the awareness portion, and that's the biggest part of anything is having what I've coined as internal and external awareness, and there's different variations of that, but it's really important to have that internal and external awareness for yourself. But if you apply it to your store and you apply it to a business perspective on how you run your business, it comes down to having the internal awareness would be your store processes and how things run, and fulfillment and all of that, versus the external awareness is going to be your customer. How aware of your customers are you? How aware of what their needs are you? And then how aware of the industry in general are you, and how all of that works? I think a lot of times what happens is that gets out of balance, and either people are really good at the store processes and they're really good at dealing with suppliers and fulfillment and employees and everything else. And then when it comes to the external side, they don't understand the customer or the industry as well as they used to in the beginning, or vice versa, because it can go both ways. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. So guys, now you're listening to this, you're like, oh, damn, I was hoping for an app. Well, promise you, if you learn what Travis is going to take you now, again, Travis on his intro said that, he's been fascinated by optimizing the human body and everything else. Now, this isn't so much about optimizing you, but one of the things that makes Travis so good at what he does is the way he thinks, and the way he can, not necessarily the way objectively that he looks at things, but also just being willing to consider things that, normal people would be like, nope, I'm not gonna even look at. So that's where this app piece comes in. So Travis, let's get back to it and talk about the human, because this whole thing, this APP, this app acronym only functions with the human attached to it, right? Because the human is the app itself. So how important and why is the human part so important in e-commerce, right? Because we don't ever talk about that. We talk about the site, we talk about the apps, we talk about the processes, the ads, the everything, but not the person behind the scenes. So why don't we talk about that?
Yeah, and it gets into really understanding and knowing yourself. Like I was saying, knowing yourself and knowing your customer, and knowing really being aware, paying attention of what's going on at all times, and not getting pulled into the current of what's happening, and analyzing things from a more from a higher level a lot of times, and then zooming in on it a lot of times also. But and whether or not, I mean, if you look at the perspective portion of it too, it's, are you looking at your store from an owner perspective, a customer perspective, or an employee perspective, primarily, and knowing all three of those, or having somebody that you can rely on to know certain aspects of those, are critical to making sure that you don't miss a certain piece. Because you might be, you might have in the awareness section, you might have, your store processes and your customers and your industry down really well, but you might not know your employees, and you might not understand the perspective they have and the information that they have and the knowledge that they have that could really amplify your results from that side also. So
Absolutely.
While we're optimizing the revenue on the store itself, there's a lot of things that potentially could be done to optimize the revenue within the business itself.
Yep. That's a great point. I actually, last week's episode, guys, I was on with Rosemary, another member of the team, and we were talking about leadership and leading teams and stuff like that. But one of the topics we got into in there was being in tune with your team and your employees and everybody, so that you can allow them to rise to the occasion and actually perform at their highest capacity. Most of the time, a team member is either not perform. They're probably at 50 or 30% of what they really could be. And it's not their fault. It's your fault. And, what Travis is talking about is having that awareness to make sure to see, on your team side, are you empowering them? Are you giving them the tools, the training, the confidence, all of those pieces to actually shine? And then also, are you receptive to what they have to say? Because they're going to see things from a completely different perspective. And you want to grow a big brand, a big store, a big successful business, and you have a team, you're never going to be able to do it on your own, because you got to be able to leverage and harness that ability of other people. So that's just one aspect of where he's going, but it ties in very nicely with what we talked about last week.
The best part of that too is, like I mentioned in the beginning, it can literally take no time at all. It doesn't cost anything. And this, we're talking business the whole time, but if you take this concept and apply it in your personal life, what'll happen is, one, I believe, your relationships and everything else will just get that much better. But by practicing it outside of work also, when you come back into your business, you're going to have skills that you developed just in your everyday life around awareness, perspective, and philosophy. And we haven't gotten into philosophy yet, but being able to develop skills that you can use outside of business that benefit your entire life. And then when you come back into your store and your business, and you can say, what, just the other day, I was having a conversation with somebody and I realized that their perspective was this. And now I see that my employees have that similar perspective. Boom. There's a eye opener right there that you might be able to make a tweak and optimize a certain process within what you're doing.
Absolutely. For sure. So now that we kind of gone to the overview, and obviously we're saying the human element is super important, let's go in and break down APP into its individual parts and how they directly impact Ecom. I know we kind of touched on it, but let's go ahead and focus specifically. So the A of the acronym, awareness, how does that impact Ecom? And what's important there?
Main thing there is being aware of your industry, being aware of the kind of like I mentioned before, the store the processes that you have within your store, how your business is running from start to finish. And you don't need to know how to do everything, just how it's performing. Because I know a lot of times as we get bigger and bigger, you go from 6 figures to 7 figures to 8 figures, then a lot of times you have other people doing other roles within the business, and you may not know how to do what they're doing, but understanding what is happening within that is critical, along with the external side of it, and knowing, from time to time, like just touching base and being aware of that customer perspective and what's happening in the industry, and not necessarily just your industry, because that's where a lot of times we'll get pigeonholed too. Like I was saying, where we're like, I'm in the beauty industry and I'm only going to look at other beauty sites, instead of, what, I'm looking for parts for my truck, and oh, look, there's a filter that they use. This is amazing. I wonder if this would work. And those kind of things are really good, whether you're an amplified partner or whether you have anybody doing any type of optimization for you on your team, those are the type of things that you can go to them and say, hey, you know what? I was just getting my tires changed the other day, and I noticed something at this tire shop that I'm wondering if it would be useful to even test or not. And do you have any data on it? Have you tested it in the past?
Mm-hmm.
Could we try this? Because those conversations are really key a lot of times also within the team, and between, revenue optimizers and the store owners themselves, because it creates that dialogue and it starts getting that kind of, sounds kind of hokey, but it's that kind of like third brain thing going where you are way more creative and productive when you start bouncing ideas back and forth off each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Okay, so we've kind of got into awareness. What's the next step?
So perspective. And like I said, awareness is the big, like overarching concept of the entire thing. Perspective is a little bit smaller, and then philosophy is a little bit smaller. So perspective is, they all kind of lead back to awareness, and perspective is just having that perspective of being able to step outside yourself or being able to step into somebody else's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
The old saying, walk a mile in someone else's shoes to see their point of view and things like that. And that's where that gets into. That's why awareness is so key, because once you're aware of that, you can say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to put myself in their shoes, or I'm going to take myself out of this situation and see it from a third person perspective and really pay attention and understand what's happening versus just thinking I know what's happening and using my history and my background to put my definition of why it's working and why it's not working on it.
Makes sense. And that's actually where it really comes in as we talk about the buyer journey. When a store owner looks at their store, they have one perspective, which is very different than the perspective of the buyer that comes in. And then the next perspective, the store owner is like, okay, I'll put myself in my customer's shoes. Well, they immediately put themselves in their best customer's shoes. Someone who's, bought 5 times already or whatever. They're not, but they don't, very seldom put themselves in a first-time customer's shoe and look at the store, because every customer is going to view it totally differently. Someone who's bought from you before, already trusts you, is going to be willing to overlook a lot of things that may have caught their attention the first time, but now they know they trust you, so they don't care. A first-time buyer doesn't have that knowledge in advance, so they're going to look at your site from a completely different perspective. And also, the store owner perspective is completely screwed up. We know, because the store owner knows how their site works and expects everybody else to know what they know, right?
Yep.
So it's definitely a very important aspect of it. Okay, so we went through that one. Yeah,
and
go
real
ahead.
Quick on that one too, it's another perspective that would be good too, because there's so many different perspectives. You really start looking into it. Another one that would be really beneficial, I believe, to at least address once in a while is the perspective of your supplier and your fulfillment house and that kind of a thing. So you literally go from creation to customer. And that way you don't miss a thing along the way, because there might be something if you sat down and thought about it for a minute, and from your fulfillment side, you might be like, you know what, we're doing this thing on our side, and I wonder, we changed this, I wonder how it's affecting them. And they may have said something, but maybe they're just trying to keep you happy.
Yep.
So it's one of those things also.
That's absolutely big. And there's a lot of times there's some cost savings along that path that can happen. Let's say your supplier in China packages things a certain way, they ship it, and when they unpack it in the fulfillment warehouse hates the way it's packed, so they charge you extra to manage this. And all you have to do to fix that is be aware of it, and then go to your supplier and say, hey, could you guys not use this heat wrap, or could you not use whatever this XYZ thing is, or could you do it this way? See what they say. Chances are they won't charge you any more to do it, because it's all happening at the same time, but it alleviates a problem on the other end. And I'm actually speaking to that from experience. We've had that same issue with suppliers from China going to our fulfillment house. And we're like, oh, well, we actually were able to eliminate a problem there that wasn't so much a problem for us. It was a cost for us, but it was a problem and an annoyance for our fulfillment partner. So we eliminated that, saved some money, and made them happier. So definitely makes things work better that way.
And that's a big part too. A big key part is making them happy. And even if you're not bending over backwards or doing anything special, the fact that they can see that you see their perspective, and that you care, for lack of a better term. Honestly, you know, I've had things in the past, situations in the past where just because I made the little bit of effort, 5 minutes, just to take and approach it from their side, they either didn't charge me extra or gave me a break sometimes.
Yep.
So, and if you're just like gung ho, you know, beating them to death with whatever you want, they're just going to raise their prices whenever they do it, like they do for everybody else, and not give you any special treatment. Good
point. That was good. All right. So we're on to the last P, right?
So philosophy. So philosophy is basically what shapes your success. And like I was saying, if you think about it kind of like a funnel, right? Awareness is up here, then you've got perspective, and then philosophy is down here. It kind of brings it all together. And that's what like Jim Rohn said, it's a set of your sails. It's the direction that you want to go, and it's how you approach things, and your philosophy, you know, are you a student of your business? Are you a student of your industry? Are you a student of just what you want? Or are you just along for the ride? And are you being, you know, do you think your way is the only way? Do you think that, you know, the customer's always right, or you're always right? Or, you know, how effective and efficient are you? And just random thing from the other day, I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about effectiveness versus efficiency. And you can be really efficient at a lot of things, but completely ineffective.
100%. Yeah.
So it's, and that kind of ties into philosophy, where you need to define that philosophy, because if you don't have a philosophy, that the biggest thing for store owners too, I think, is that, well, I know, is if you don't have your philosophy, well, all three, if you don't have your awareness, your perspective, and your philosophy in place and visible to the people that work for you and that you have within your supply chain, it'll become very, very obvious that you don't have that, and that it may even appear that I'm just in it for me. I don't care about you. And it caused a lot of problems in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge one. Like, if people don't, you know, if there's the team that you work with can't see that you care about anything but yourself or the direction you're headed. But the other thing is, the direction you're headed, if your philosophy is not clear and shared, then nobody else's direction is pointing the same way as yours, because they don't know what it is. They can't. You have to have that unified front. It applies to vision and everything else. It's actually a byproduct of that. But, you know, and then guys, we're not talking like tactical ecom stuff, but we're talking about the stuff that fuels the foundation for something to be sustainable. You can definitely use all of our tactics, have a one-hit wonder, make a bunch of money, and then wonder why it all came crashing down. This app that we're talking about is how do you maintain and prevent things from coming crashing down, and also allowing you to have that systematic and stable growth that you can rely on. Like, we're building businesses for the long run. I don't have any interest in building a business just for the short term, because it's a lot of work. So if you're going to build it, you want it to provide and last. And all of these pieces that Travis is talking about are key. And they sound kind of woo-woo-y at times, but the reality is they make a really definitive impact. And if you're a guy who only cares about the bottom line, pay attention to this stuff and watch your bottom line improve. But you can't, you know, the other thing is like Travis said, I want to touch back on, is if your team doesn't know you care, 99.9% of the time, your customers will also not know that you care. And if they don't know you care, then you're not going to have any customers, because at some level, that's like a trigger that they want to know is there. They want to know that this company cares about it, even though they really know, hey, you're out to sell something and make money, but they also want to know that you're actually, you know, you've got their back in terms of this product and everything else as well. And, you know, if you're not clear on that, it doesn't just present itself on its own. You have to make an effort to do that.
Yeah, and if you look at the most successful people in history, right, they have some form of these three things in place. And by having those in place, you know, a lot of them, maybe all of them, I don't know for certain, but, you know, a large majority of people that have been super successful have lost everything and got it all back again. And then there's people out there that, like you were saying, you could lose you build it up. There's no guarantee you're going to keep it. But if you don't have something like this in place, like the people from history have had in place that rebuilt easily and quickly by being able to get their teams together and everything else, then you're not going to be able to get that going again. So that's kind of the coolest thing is seeing if you have questions about, does this work? I'm not sure about this. Do a little research on some of your mentors from the past or mentors that you have now, and ask them these questions. You can be like, what do you think about awareness? Internal and external. What do you think about perspective, as far as buyer perspective, customer perspective, suppliers and all of that? And then what's your philosophy? Because I guarantee that if they're successful and they've been successful for a long time and had any types of ups and downs, they're going to have, like I said, some form of this working in their, not only in their business, but also in their personal life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's good. All right. So we've talked about the three pieces, kind of how they apply directly to e-com and also how they apply to your life and stuff, which is great. Next question is, how do I install it? How do I install the APP app? How do I use it?
So that's the best part. That's the best part. You're already using it to a certain extent. The biggest eye-opening piece of what we're talking about here, and for everybody watching, what you're seeing right now is now you know about it. Because a lot of times we are doing things and we just don't realize that we're doing them, or our eyes haven't been opened yet. So just by knowing that awareness, perspective, and philosophy are three key aspects of anything in business and life, you'll see it more often throughout the day. As you go through your day, whether you're at home or at work, you're going to start seeing things that you hadn't seen before, internally within your business, externally within your business. Your perspective around when you have a conversation with somebody, either during that conversation or after that conversation, it's going to click, and you're going to be like, you know what? Now I understand what they're talking about, because I can see their side of it a lot more clearly. And then as far as the philosophy goes, the same thing. It all just kind of trickles down, like I was saying, like a big funnel. And you hit philosophy in those two. Awareness builds on perspective, and perspective builds on philosophy. And it all just becomes one big recipe that, like I said, now you know about it. It's going to be in the back of your head. You won't not be able to think about it. It's just how much time do you want to put into paying attention to that? Because once you see it, realize it, and say, you know what, I'm going to just make a concerted effort to be able to build on these skills that I already have that I didn't know I had. And that's where the gold happens right there. That's when all the progress really takes off.
Makes sense. So I know the next question is going to be for people is, okay, I understand that it's there, it's already in me. Maybe I'm not very good at leveraging it. But now that I'm aware of it, as you said, I can start, becoming better at it and just paying more attention to it. And actually, even if it may not be subconscious, maybe it is a conscious effort. Like you have a reminder, like, you have, APP, put it on a sticky note or something, and you can kind of remind yourself, like, I want to look at this. Well, how's my awareness? What am I aware of in this case? What's my perspective on this issue? And you can kind of run through a little filter to kind of train yourself to start using it. But how long is it going to take for someone to kind of, I guess in their terms, get good, get better at where they're at?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like to default to the 21 days. It's been proven that it takes anywhere from 21 days to 66 days to build a habit. I like to default on the lower side of that, because once you get the momentum going, then it's easy to go from 21 to 66 days. So if you really want a specific number, I would say the sticky note with app on it. I love that idea. You can stick that everywhere, and then focus on, for 7 days, focus on focus on awareness. And as you're going throughout your day, focus on if you need to, if you're not at work or whatever, focus on your internal awareness, how you feel, whatever. If you're at your business, focus on your store processes and what they're doing, and then the customer experience in the industry and how everything's working there. But don't worry about perspective and philosophy. Just do awareness for 7 days. And then on the 8th day, add perspective in, because you'll have awareness. It may not be down where it's second nature, but it'll be in your head well enough to where you won't need to concentrate and really put a lot of effort into it. Not that you'll have to put really that much effort into it anyways, but on the 8th day, you can say, you know what, I'm gonna start looking at perspective now. I'm gonna start trying to make sure that I can see other people's perspective and put myself in their shoes. And then after 7 days of that, you'll go into philosophy. So on the 15th day, you'll start working on the philosophy of, what's my philosophy in business? What's my philosophy in life, if you want? But what's the philosophy that I'm portraying to my employees, to my suppliers, to my fulfillment, to everybody else? And then after that 21st day, you'll have all three running, and you can go back. And if there's anything that was a little bit like, I felt like I didn't really understand, I didn't really feel like I got awareness down really well, you can go back to that. But having that sticky note, you can stick them everywhere, right? They're little reminders. Yeah. Somebody was telling me the other day too, there's I don't remember what exactly it was, but he calls them alarm clocks. And you take these sticky notes and you put them all over your house or wherever you are. And it's like an alarm clock. As soon as you see it, it's a trigger to remember to do it. So the biggest hurdle with this is not actually in doing it. It's remembering to do it. And having those triggers is the biggest thing. And you can set a timer if you have a watch, phone. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I love, tying it into, habit forming and everything else, because it's a skill that you progressively get better at over time. And if you make it part of your routine and your habit, and it's another tool in your toolbox, but it becomes an unconscious tool that you leverage every single time, rather than a hammer that just hammers things in. It's actually like a multi-tool that can help you with all aspects of your business and your personal life. So I think that's awesome.
Well, now, if you I was just going to say real quick, if you have processes that you look at on a daily basis for your business, you can add this in really easily, right? And you just add this, like put app at the bottom of your list of things that you go through for your business, whether it's daily or weekly or whatever. And that way you see it on your list, and it's not like you have to write a full dissertation about it, but you can either write something about it or just sit and be like, what was I aware of today? What perspective did I have today? And what philosophy was I showing?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so one last question for you, and this is, we're giving people a lot to consider. I'm sure this is more of like they've got to let it percolate a little bit in their brain to kind of internalize it. But is any one aspect of APP more important than the other? Does anything get like a heavier weight, or they should give more emphasis to, or anything like that?
I would say awareness. Awareness, definitely. It is the one that would require, if you had to break it down into the amount of work, awareness would be the number one thing. And that's the one thing that I talk about whenever I talk about it. I talk about awareness the most, because if you don't focus on awareness first and understand that to a certain extent, then perspective and philosophy won't fall into place, because you won't be aware enough to be able to implement or be able to see the other perspectives and develop a solid philosophy. So I would say, yeah. And going back to the funnel, right? You got awareness here at the top, and then you've got perspective, and then you've got philosophy down at the bottom. So, or not at the bottom, but bringing it all together.
Makes sense. No, I love it. So Travis, thank you very much. That was a lot of good stuff today. Guys, definitely take some time to consider this. Don't do what most people are going to do and just brush this off and say, oh, that sounds like work. That sounds woo-woo or whatever. There's a reason we're taking the time to share this with you today, because it is that important to your business. So give it a thought, give it some chance, and try it, and just see where it takes you from there. And with that, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode. If you have not done so yet, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast. Go to Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast and click subscribe. If you need links to the different platforms, go to buildgrowscale.com/podcast. You can get the show notes there and links to all the different podcast platforms so you can subscribe. Also, this show is also on YouTube, so make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, because a lot of times we share things on the screen that you may want to see, not just listen to, all right? And then finally, the last thing I'd like to say is, if you enjoyed this episode, you like listening to Travis or any of our other guests, leave us a review. Let us know what you thought, and maybe give us some ideas and tips or things that you would like to see us talk about in the future. This podcast is for you, so we're excited to see what you have to say. And with that, guys, thank you, and we will see you in the next episode.